Wednesday, July 3rd, 2019, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So, very interesting price action for gold. I'm shocked how quick the pullback to the breakout area was. And yeah, in my opinion, that means gold could go ballistic very soon. Of course, the powers that be, the bullion banks, are probably going to try to, control the move. But maybe they're losing control. Who knows? There are, of course, a few headlines that have been attributed to the move in gold. I'm not too sure if that's the reason why gold moved up. I think, if you look at other indicators like the bond markets, yields are dropping massively. The 2 years making a new low as I speak this morning. Even though the stock market has kept going up. Yeah, the headlines, of course, one of them is that there was a Russian submarine that sunk. Some people are saying that it was the Americans that sunk it. But if you look at RT, it says tragic accident on Russian research submersible claims lives of 14 Navy servicemen. So maybe, they know something we don't, the Russian government. Maybe what RT is reporting is just for public consumption. But yeah, there are, of course, a lot of geopolitical tensions out there with Iran, Russia, and the trade wars. There's also the talk about Instex, which is spelled INSTEX. That's a new payment system that has been created between the EU and Iran, and that's up and running now. Some people are saying, "Oh, that's going to hurt, the dollar." One thing we need to realize, though, that I find it highly unlikely that very big European corporations that depend a lot on US for their sales and revenues are going to risk things by dealing with the Iranians through Instex. It's supposed to be a replacement for SWIFT, of course. So, but yesterday we saw as well, or recently, that I think it was Monday or yesterday, I'm not too sure, that there's talk again in the US that they will reimpose tariffs on the EU for a few $billions. So maybe that's a shot across the bow to the EU and European companies. Look, don't even think about Instex. So that's out there as well. And the other interesting story that came out late yesterday, and I think that was after the market closed, the stock market, and just before COMEX reopened late yesterday at 11 p.m. London, is that Donald Trump looks like he's going to nominate Judy Shelton to one of the board openings at the FOMC. There's still 2 board openings on the Federal Open Market Committee, or the board of the Federal Reserve in Washington, to be filled. I have spoken about Judy Shelton several times. I will put the links to the videos that I talked about her up in the cards above, and also in this description below some links to it. The first one was November 22nd, 2016. So I've been following this long time. And it's entitled Down 19,000, Irrational Markets, and the Trump Gold Standard. That was November 22nd, 2016. The other one was April 1st, 2017. The gold standard is the only solution to the trade deficit. So in both these articles, I put a link to a Fortune magazine article where you can see how Judy Shelton thinks. Basically, she says that without having a new Bretton Woods conference and having like a gold standard, maybe a bit different than the gold exchange system of Bretton Woods, is the only way to solve the problem of trade. Because as she notes, gold is a neutral measure of value, can't be cheated, and it's a stable system. You don't have countries printing money if you have a gold standard and everyone abides to it. And that's why trade balances are more balanced, during in the gold standard. And we have been I have spoken in the past, and some other people on YouTube have spoken that maybe all this trade negotiations and trade wars is to try to set up a fairer system so that the U.S. could eventually impose or go to the drawing table with the biggest countries in the world like China, Russia, the EU, and put the world back on the gold standard. Before the U.S. can do that, of course, it needs to make sure that it's not running a trade deficit, because if you run a trade deficit under a gold standard, it won't work. What will happen is that the gold window, so to speak, for the U.S. will be closed very quickly because gold will be flowing out. So that makes sense. Does this mean that just because he nominated Judy Shelton, that we're going to go on the gold standard right away and things are going to be great? I don't think so. But I think the major thing about having someone like that, potentially, because she still has to be approved in Congress, I think in the Senate, the most important thing is that she's going to bring this to the general public, this idea. Before, yesterday in her nomination, very few people even cared or knew about Judy Shelton, but now it's going to be in the mainstream. So I think that's why it's important. So this is what the FT says. Donald Trump to nominate Fed critic to the central bank's board. It's funny because anyone who thinks differently is a Fed critic, and it looks like the mainstream, FT and CNBC and Bloomberg, it's like you can't criticize the Fed. You're being political, but it's rubbish. The Fed has a lot to answer for, of course. So it says, pick of Judy Shelton comes as the U.S. president escalates attacks on the Federal Reserve. Yeah, this is the way they're playing it, you see. But one interesting thing she said, it says in the article, Miss Shelton, who is currently the U.S. representative on the board of the EBRD, or European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, has previously made headlines for her outspoken views on what she called Soviet power of the Fed. She told the Financial Times in May that if appointed to the Fed board, she would ask tough questions about whether it should maintain its rate-setting powers. And she goes on to say, that's her quote to the FT, how can a dozen, slightly less than a dozen people meeting 8 times a year decide what the cost of capital should be versus some kind of organically market supply determined rate, she said. And it goes on to say, Ms. Shelton has also long been sympathetic to the gold standard, which the U.S. fully abandoned in the early 1970s in favor of a flexible exchange rate for the dollar. She told the FT she wanted a new Bretton Woods-style conference to reset the international monetary system, replacing the current regime, mostly based on floating currencies. And her quote is, if it takes place at Mar-a-Lago, that would be great, she added, referring to the President's Golf Club in Florida. And it goes on to say that last month she told the Washington Post she thought interest rates should be cut as fast as possible. So that's a bit contradictory. She thinks the market should set rates, but at the same time she's saying the Fed should cut rates. But maybe it's because it's not as simple because the Fed has been in control for so long. But yes, I'm not saying we're going to go back on the gold standard. I'm not saying the power of the Fed is going to be, extinguished very quickly. I think it's really interesting that we're just getting, this person, this woman, to come onto the scene and to talk publicly to the rest of the world. It will hopefully raise awareness of how this system is flawed. So yeah, that's good news. Do I think all these headlines and stuff, this is what made gold go up? Personally not. I think it's more to do with what the bond market is saying. So before I look at the markets this morning, I'll look at the bond yields, what they're doing. It's 7:33 a.m. London. So right now, as I speak here, the 10-year yield is making new lows for the year. We're at 194, and it's down almost 4 basis points. So yeah, the 3-month yield is at 221. So it's the inversion right now is massive. It's like 27 basis points inverted. Look how quickly bond yields have come down. Last year they topped at 325, the 10-year, and now we're at 194. So that's not a good sign, and that's in spite of the fact that the stock market keeps going up. Yesterday we were up again, but something's out of whack here, and I think it's the stock market. So what about gold? Before I go onto the prices here, just show you a really interesting chart. Is a monthly chart going back to, you can see the top in 2011, the bottom in 2015. And I've spoken about this Fibonacci retracement 38.2, why 1380 was such an important level. And I spoke about this before the breakout in gold. And that's one of the reasons why I think that 1375 was big resistance. It's close enough. 1375 to 1380, and 38.2 is a really key level. So yes, the breakout was very quickly, and we did say that there is a possibility of retesting the breakout, and we did it this week, in my opinion. And the low this week so far has been just above 1381. So it's amazing that we actually retested that 38.2 retracement. We didn't quite go back down towards 1375. Some people had 1350. And right now we're right back up. Late yesterday, gold traded up as far as 1438. So almost back up to that 1440 level. Right now we're at 1424.70, up 6. So the low has been 1417. It's going to be probably a quieter day today. It's a half day in the US. Silver, unfortunately, is unchanged, 1530. The high's been 1548, low 1527. Stock markets are virtually unchanged. The Dow is down 6 points, 26,763. S&P and NASDAQ 100 are also virtually unchanged. The pounds continue to go down. We're down 0.2%, trading with a 25 handle now, 125.65. So the sick pound continues. The price of gold in pounds is making a new high. We're now at 1,133 or 134 basically. So that, the next resistance is the all-time high, which is 1,194. Someone made a comment the other day that I only look at, why don't I move to the US? I only look at gold in dollars. But no, I do look at gold in pounds. But the thing is that most people, even in the UK, look at the price of gold in dollars. But I actually look at it in pounds as well. The euro is down slightly, 112.79, down 5 pips. The dollar is down 0.25% against the yen at 107.59. And the dollar is up slightly against the yuan, 689.20. Crude oil, we came off yesterday. Right now, WTI is up 0.2% at 56.62, and Brent is up 2/3 as well, 62.74. So the pullback in gold was very quick. Of course, we could pull back again, but I don't think so. It looks very ballistic, the price of gold. I'm not going to speculate where it could be by the end of this week or next week, but I think it could be at very different levels. I'm not going to try to guess. What about all the other headlines? Yes, the Judy Shelton headline is very interesting. The geopolitical headlines and tensions are probably only going to grow, so we need to keep an eye on those. Of course, commentators are going to say this is what this is why this happened or that happened, this is why gold went up. But I think in the end of the day, I think it's because of central banking policy that they're going to have to cut rates, that the economies are actually imploding, and they're going to have to start the printing presses again. That's what it's all about. So keep on stacking. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, and you can also follow me on Twitter, Steemit, and on DTube. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.